Project Management. Glad you're here and hope the feeling is mutual, or at least mostly mutual. This month's episode is a review of The Servant Leader by Ken Blanchard and Phil Hodges. And I'll cut to the chase. The servant leader uses Jesus as the perfect example of the servant leader. If that's your jam, you're going to love this episode. If not, I still encourage you to listen anyways. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at what might impact you in this compact 10-minute episode. Some final notes: listen to the end for my pithy 4 point summary, and also remember to stay tuned to the end for your corresponding PMI code. And now a little background. The thesis of this book is that the best leaders are servant leaders, and Jesus is the best of them all. He dealt with hitting goals while dealing with a myriad of challenges, such as working with imperfect people, conflict resolution, and overpriced coffee. So let's dive in on the 4 principles that will help you develop your servant leader principles. These will help you with so many aspects of your life, whether it's at home, leading a project, or a host of other activities. Number 1, the heart is key. So let's see how it impacts your leadership. First tip is to beware of a selfish heart. If you usually handle feedback negatively, if you're afraid to lose your position, you may be suffering from a selfish heart. To counteract this, be doing all you can to prepare future leaders. It not only benefits these future leaders, but it leaves your organization in a much stronger position, especially when you move on. And let's be honest, at some point, we all have to move on. Another heart issue is to tame your pride and fear. As you know, you might suffer from this if you value more on who is talking versus what is being said. Again, try to focus on what is being said and not focus on who is saying it. Of course, unless it's a favorite famous celebrity like the Kardashians. Number 2, the head. The authors say that leadership head can be summarized into 2 categories. The first is visionary, which is doing the right thing. The second is implementation, which is doing things right. Both Ken and Phil say that your leadership will fall into one of these 2 camps. So, my advice is to find a position that accentuates your skill in either being visionary or implementation. It's parallel to the worker bee or the queen bee. Implementation types of leaders are more like worker bees, where, as you can probably imagine, visionary leaders are more like queen bees. The other main key to the leadership head is getting your people excited about the purpose. Now, maybe not at rock star levels of excitement, but excited enough to be highly motivated to excel at the vision. This may include a pep talk, a PowerPoint showing the benefits of your project, etc., etc. The key here is that your team or organization cannot surpass your passion as the leader. If your leadership is tepid, your team will begin to reflect that with mediocre performance at best. You need to passionately show your team the benefits of your project or vision. Help your people live out the vision and become a servant leader. Number 3, the hands. So, the hands portion of the servant leader is where the rubber hits the road. This is the most practical part of this book. First, remember that change is as hard as a politician's head. So, tell your people what to expect. Remember to involve everyone as much as possible. Your people need to feel like they were heard, whether it's an informal meeting with 5 or 6 people or a survey sent to hundreds. Also, remind your people that change is inevitable, so you might as well set yourself up for success rather than be left in the dust. Finally, stay focused on the goal or your people will revert back. That may mean getting rid of the old system so that your people can only use the new one. Now, the second portion of the hands section is a bit of a side topic. Ken references a flashback to his previous teaching on transformational leadership, which he also references as situational leadership part 2. The objective of this section is to grow promising members of your team into future leaders. So, first, diagnose their ability to lead. Second, flexibility is the next section, but I'd like to call it level of support. Does your future leader need low or high support? Does your future leader need low or high direction? Having a potential leader who needs high support or high direction doesn't necessarily rule them out, especially if this is a person with high level of drive. Your goal is to give them as much freedom as possible. This is very akin to the autonomy principle from author Dan Pink, which we talked about in a previous episode. Finally, number three, partner for performance. It almost goes without saying, but you need to deeply partner with your future leader. The end goal is to have your future leader being both highly competent and highly committed. My personal advice is that your student needs to be highly committed from the start. If the commitment isn't here pretty quickly, that should be a deal breaker. Number four, habits and next steps. For brevity, I'm going to combine the final two steps here. And we're going to talk about developing habits and resources for maintaining a servant leadership for years to come. First, alone time. You should spend approximately 30 minutes per day to go for a walk or just think about your students, reflect upon the day. Second, unconditional love. You need to care about each of your team members. You need to invest into each one of them. Third, accountability relationships. It's a given that your students are in an accountability relationship with you. However, leaders need to be in accountability relationships too. We all need to have a team of advisors, no matter how talented or experienced we are. And fourth, review, share, and practice. For these principles to stick, really stick, you need to review and practice them repeatedly. Also, don't be like an episode of Hoarders. Share this information with people you care about. Alrighty then, it's past my bedtime, so let's wrap up this little burrito. So here's our pithy little project management lesson. And to make it further concise, I'll take the 7 tips down to 4. So here we go. Heart. This advice seems paradoxical, but watch your heart first. Be careful of being prideful and self focused. Without serving others, it's so easy to become self focused. 2. The head. Are you a visionary or implementation leader? More importantly, are you passionate about growing your team into the vision or goal that you've outlined? Third, the hands. Change is hard, so set your team up for success. Have a plan and make sure that they're involved. And finally, fourth, habits. You need to practice these traits for them to stick. Simply reading this book or listening to this episode won't suffice. All right, folks, that's a wrap. And remember, today's episode counts towards 0.25 hours of power skills if you're looking for those continuing ed hours for your PMP certification. Finally, a big thanks to all your listeners out there. Once again, thank you for listening to Pithy Project Management. For spending a short time out of your day to sharpen the saw, you won't regret investing in yourself. This podcast was written and produced by Ben Walker. You can contact us via the podcast notes or look up Pithy Project Management on Facebook. Feel free to send in any questions, comments, suggestions, but save your complaints for your dog. Thank you. God bless and good night.